Hey there, this is the One Boom, and today we're going to be talking about weapon balance in Call of Duty, and more importantly, the misconceptions I constantly hear about it. You see, I have been talking about weapon balance in Call of Duty since 2014, and while back then I knew a lot less than I do now, one problem has always stood out to me over everything else. The community, player base, whatever you want to call it, has this awful misconception that every gun being really overpowered means that nothing's overpowered and everything is totally balanced. This is a misconception because there's no such thing as everything being overpowered unless everything has identical stats. And even then, if they all had identical stats, people would gravitate towards the weapons that have the best iron sights or take up the least amount of screen real estate. So unless they all have the same stats and the same models, then maybe we're in business, but they'd also have to have the same reload animations because otherwise people would go for the ones that block the center of the screen the least. You see, the reason you can't have a Call of Duty game where every gun is overpowered is because eventually players will find the weapon that is just a little bit above the rest, whether in terms of actual power, like time to kill, DPS, headshot multiplier, something like that, a genuinely broken attachment that increases damage to a crazy degree, something along those lines, or general ease of use. Now, this is a little bit harder to quantify. How do you quantify ease of use? Well, basically, how much do you have to consider your engagements due to the weapon you're using? Barely at all, if not at all? Well, then you might be looking at the weapon that's going to be lighting up kill feeds for the next 12 months. See, rarely is the most overpowered, overused weapon, and we'll get to that in a second, rarely is the most overpowered, overused weapon just highest damage or fastest TTK. If it was all about fastest TTK, like in Modern Warfare 2 currently, everybody would be trying to do mobility builds on the RAL LMG. Ease of use in other shooters can mean a lot of different things, but in Call of Duty specifically, it has almost always meant I can hold my right trigger down on somebody, inputting very little into my mouse or analog stick for recoil control, and they're gonna die within 5 shots. You see, I don't think I made it very clear in my TAC 56 video that I uploaded yesterday, which I think people are misconstruing a little bit of what I'm saying in that video. That's kind of my fault. I didn't script out the video first, I just sort of did it freestyle. I shouldn't review weapons freestyle, I should write down bullet points and keep them organized. But I was discussing how the TAC 56 needs a nerf, and people were saying that, well, then the Kastov 545 will take its place, and I absolutely disagree with that. And also I was told that the only reason people are using the TAC 56 over the M4 is that the M4 is currently banned in Ranked. But the M4's iron sights are worse, the visual recoil on the M4 is worse, and if you took all of the mobility attachments that I put on the SCAR, put them on the M4, plus just a sack and tread 40 for recoil compensation, you are not going to be getting the same ease of use that you would with the TAC 56 or the SCAR. The Kastov 545 is very, very competitive, except for the fact that you can't just laser people across the map with only one recoil mitigating attachment. Believe me, I've tried. Now, the weapons are totally usable with only one recoil controlling attachment and a bunch of speed attachments. Again, sure, fine, totally usable, but the reason people are gravitating towards the TAC 56, regardless of what's banned in Ranked or not, is that you don't have that extra bit of recoil, screen shake, you just have such a laser beam ease of use weapon. And you don't have to kit the gun out to be heavy to be accurate, and that's where, again, its ease of use and ease of customization even is just too good. I mean, at 50 meters, you can laser somebody by barely influencing your analog stick or mouse, and I think that's a little bit bad. So is it overpowered or is it just overused? I mean, a gun being easy doesn't mean it's good, it just means it's easy. It's not really making anybody sweat too much. Well, no. Call of Duty is generally pretty easy, but if you can get into gunfights without worrying about your mobility, your recoil, your sprint to fire speed, all you know is that you're using an assault rifle, so it's slower than an SMG and lighter than a light machine gun, and that you barely have to influence the gun at all to take people out at a distance, and up close, you're no slouch either. In fact, if they're within 28 meters or so, you're gonna be able to get a 3-shot to their upper chest, and they're gonna die very, very quickly. On top of that, the weapon's iron sights are incredibly clean and easy to use, and provide very little in terms of visual recoil, which again, I think is fitting for a weapon that's as heavy as this is. Like I said in my TAC 56 video, I wouldn't want to see it messed with in terms of how it feels to use, but just the ease in which it's used. Like when I'm aimed down sight and killing somebody, I want that to feel the same, but all of the mobility that leads to that kill, I think that needs to be tweaked. If something is overused, that doesn't necessarily mean it's overpowered or that you can't get kills with other things. But let me word this to you another way, and this isn't that far-fetched. If I challenged you to a 1v1 and said, hey, I'm gonna work about 15-20% less hard than you if you don't use this specific meta weapon, you're gonna have to work 15 to 20% harder than me in our gunfights. You're gonna have to control your recoil more, you're gonna have to tap fire more, you're gonna have to land more shots than me. If you wanna match my recoil, you're gonna have to kill your movement speed. If you wanna have my mobility or greater mobility than me, that's fine, but again, get ready to work a lot harder on controlling your recoil than I'll have to. Basically, if I challenged you to a private match where more gunfights than not are going to be in my favor because I'm working less hard than you in a gunfight, it doesn't matter how competent your weapon is. It doesn't matter that your weapon is just as usable as mine. What matters is you are working a lot harder than I am. And I say a lot harder, maybe it's only a little harder, but it's harder. This has blown my mind for a while, that people think that something being just easy to use doesn't mean it's overpowered. Yeah, not inherently, not all the time, but if I have to work harder than you for kills, it causes a feeling of imbalance. At the very least, it causes a feeling of frustration. There's a reason all those sweaty players you see running around are using the TAC-56, or the Vaznev, or the Lockman. The sub, not the 7.62. They don't want guns that can kill people, they want guns that make killing people the afterthought. They want guns that are so easy that their muscle memory can take over, their eyes can track the target, and they know their gun isn't gonna have to be fought all the way to the bank. To poorly use another analogy, they can lead the gun to water and make it drink without having to sweat too much about it. And in Call of Duty, I have seen this for years. Low visual recoil, low recoil in general, a medium to high fire rate, and the ability to kill within 5 shots at most ranges in a 6v6 environment, yeah, that's the gun that's gonna be used. And the idea that you buff everything else up to that weapon doesn't work. You're not going to make the playing field perfect, at least. Obviously, you want every gun to feel fun and viable. Okay, neat. I'm not trying to squash that idea. That idea is pretty solid. Everything being viable should be something that developers are prioritizing. I'm not trying to shit on the idea of developers making guns viable. I'm correcting the people that think that the developers can just make everything overpowered and then everything's perfect. Every gun will just perfectly fit a role, and that's that. So essentially, if we want every weapon to have its own role, then we shouldn't want to make every weapon overpowered. To make every weapon in Call of Duty overpowered means you've made them overly versatile and you've made them just too easy to use in more situations than not. Meaning, you didn't give them roles and, make the sandbox better. You made everything sort of a blobby amalgamation. There's not really a reason to use AR1 over AR3 or AR2 over AR5 because they're all sort of good at everything. That's not the goal. Some guns need to suck at certain things so that you don't choose them every time for every map and every engagement, especially now that we have mid-match class customization. We've had it since 2019, so hopefully that puts it a bit better. Basically, to summarize, what I'm saying here is that if you want the weapons to have a good role in the sandbox and have a nice, balanced, interesting sandbox, then we can't just buff everything and make everything a versatile people deleter. Even in the games that did that the best, still didn't get it done, because there's a part of this that you're never going to get rid of unless you want everything to have the same animations, model, and stats. Players will seek out that which is easiest to use and allows them to rely more on muscle memory and game sense than constantly fighting the weapon. Pro players don't want an SMG where they're worried about hip fire spread and recoil control and exactly what attachments they have on it to mitigate its downsides. They want whatever allows them to track the target with their eyes and just let their muscle memory do the rest below the screen. The TAC-56 should be heavier than an M4, and the mobility attachments that would mitigate that problem should cause a little bit of a problem with recoil. But basically what I was saying in that video is that not only were the shortcomings not really there, the ability to mitigate the shortcomings is way too easy. But now I know what you guys are thinking. If people are going to gravitate to whatever's easiest anyway, then what's the point of nerfing something like the TAC-56? Better to have the devil you know than the devil you don't. You don't know what's gonna take its place. Well, there's several really good arguments for nerfing the TAC-56. First of all, even if it wasn't overpowered, giving it a nerf because everybody's running it due to its ease of use would just shake up the meta a bit so you're not dying to the same gun all year round, and that would also encourage you to shake up your classes every couple of seasons if the meta weapon gets knocked off its throne once in a while. So there's an argument for variety. There's also an argument that with the TAC-56, specifically being heavier, other weapons that are lighter but aren't as accurate would rise to the top a little bit easier. I think a lot of people are leaving behind certain weapons because, yeah, they might be lighter, but they're not as easy to use. If the SCAR was heavier, I keep going between the fake name and the real name, I'm sorry, but if the SCAR was heavier, it would better fit its role as a longer range assault rifle than something that can clear a building as well as it can clear the longest lane on a 6v6 map. The argument for nerfing a weapon that is too damn easy to use or is overpowered and dominating the kill feeds in the meta is that I shouldn't feel like I'm playing a losing game every time I avoid that one completely low recoil 3-shot killing assault rifle that I keep dying to. I actually want everything to feel viable and feel like it has a place, and I don't like using a Lockman 5.56 and feeling like I should have picked a TAC-56. Using an M4 and feeling like I should have picked a TAC-56, using a cast-off 5.45 and feeling like you get it. And here's the kicker to end off the video. The weapon that takes the place of whatever the current meta choice is might be that touch less versatile, that touch less easy to use, and while it might get overused, at least you don't feel like the enemy is working just that much less than you are. We don't want guns dominating at every single range in the game or being so easy to use we don't even have to consider them when we start firing them full auto at 50 meters. Players will always find a new top dog, players will always sniff out the best of the best and the lowest recoil. We are really good at optimizing our fun whenever we play shooters because we want something that we don't have to stress about. We're always going to look for that, but it's up to the developers what we find while we're exploring. Thank you so much for watching this video. It was fun to record. If you guys want to watch me live, hit the bell icon to get notified when I go live. I live stream on this channel. And if you agree, leave a like rating. And if you disagree, let me know why in the comment section below. I'll see you when I see you guys. Goodbye.